Hello and welcome to the first video in this beginner's guide to Adobe Photoshop. In this tutorial, we are going to kick things off from the very start. In this video, we are going to take a look at the Adobe Photoshop interface. Now, the first version of Photoshop was released in the late 1980s. With all the innovations and new features that have been introduced over the years, up until now the interface itself has not changed all that much. For those of you that are completely new to Photoshop, I'm going to show you around and introduce you to some of the things you need to be aware of. Now, I'm currently using Adobe Photoshop CC 2014 for Mac. If you're using an earlier version or Windows, some things may be a little different in parts, but in principle it should be the same. So if you have Photoshop open and wish to follow along, you will need to first come up to Window, scroll down to Workspace, then scroll down and select Essentials. Then, to make sure we all have the same setup, we must again go to Window, Workspace, and then scroll down and select Reset Essentials. This will then set the interface to the Essentials default layout, and you should have something that looks like this. Now, don't worry if your setup is not exactly the same as mine here. What you should have is the default settings. Just follow along and you should be fine. What you will come to learn later on is that you can customize this layout, but what would help right now is for you to have the same or similar layout so you can follow along with me. Now, one other thing you need to make sure you have active is the application frame. The application frame is the grey space you see here in the background. If we come again to Window and scroll down to the bottom, we have the application frame here. So if I click this to turn it off, we can see the desktop. Now, we can work like this, but I find it much easier to work with the application frame on. So for the duration of this course, we will need the application frame on. So I'll come back to Window, scroll down and click to activate it there. Perfect. So this is Adobe CC, and with CS6 and CC, we have this dark interface. If you're using an earlier version, you'll be looking at the light interface. Now, if for whatever reason you wish to toggle the interface color, if you come to Photoshop on the top toolbar, I believe this is in Edit for Windows, scroll down to Preferences and select Interface. It's here you can toggle the lightness and darkness at the top of this menu. I like it dark, so I'm going to select the darkest option and click OK. So to begin, I'm going to open up a document. This document is going to help me demonstrate various functionality of the program, which we are going to be covering a little later on in this video, so be sure to open this up and follow along. Now, this document can be found in the Introduction folder in the Project folder. Now, you can download this project folder for free. The download link is in the description. So with the project folder open, click on Introduction, Interface Introduction, and open the Interface Introduction file. And you should have something that looks like this. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the interface. So on the far left, we have this tall, slim panel. This is the Tools panel and contains all the tools that can be used in Photoshop. As you can see, we have lots of icons here. To activate a tool, we simply click it, or press one of the many shortcut buttons on the keyboard. We know which tool is active because it will have a highlight square behind it on the Tools panel. In Photoshop, we will be using many tools, and most tools have their own unique mouse cursor icon. You will notice that as we use the tool, the mouse cursor will change, indicating which tool we have activated. So if we look carefully, we can see that almost all the icons have a little white arrow in the bottom right corner. If we click and hold an icon with a white arrow, this will reveal more tools in that set. For example, if I click and hold on the pen tool, we can see an extra 4 tools within that set. If I click and hold on the shape tool, we can see a variety of tools that can be created very easily. So keep in mind that some tools work in sets. Now, if we take a closer look at the bottom of this panel, we can see 2 overlapping squares. Now, if you're new to Photoshop, you may not be familiar with this. What this represents is a foreground color and a background color. The top square is the foreground and the bottom square is the background color. So right now we can see that the foreground color on the top is black and the background color is white. Now if you look closely, just above the foreground and background color in the Tools panel, we have this little button called Swap Foreground and Background. And if I press this, it's going to swap the foreground and background color like so. So very easily, we can swap the foreground color and the background color. Now to the left of the Swap Foreground and Background, we have another little button, and this is the Default Foreground and Background. If I press this, it's going to set the foreground and background squares to black and white. Now, we can't really see this happening at the moment as our colours are already black and white. Though should the foreground and background colour be set to other colours, clicking this will set them to black and white. So as you can see, the Tools menu is currently in one column. If we look closely up to the top left of the Tools panel, we can see these little arrows pointing right. If I come and click this once, we can change the panel to a double column, and if we press this again, we can go back to the single column. For the duration of this course, I'm going to click and set my Tools panel to a single row. Now if we move to the top of our window, we can see the standard toolbar across the top. From here we can access various properties, controls, and initiate some of the creative features in Photoshop. But we're not going to go into this too much right now. Just under the top bar, we have the Control panel. The Control panel spans the entire width of the screen just under the main menu at the top. Now this Control panel is really useful as this will display various properties and options of a particular tool you have selected at any given time. You will soon realize that this is one of the most key panels in the program, and as you use Photoshop, you will be referring to this panel a lot. So if I move down through the Tools menu and click on each tool, notice how the Control panel changes. This is displaying all the various tools and options of that tool that can be toggled and used accordingly. Later in the course, you will be learning how we will use this panel as we start to use the various tools in the Tools panel. So keep in mind, as you use your tools, keep an eye on the Control panel as this is really useful. Moving over to the right hand side, we have some panels visible and another slim panel with icons. These icons represent panels that can be made visible by clicking on them. Here we have History and Properties. If I click on the icon once, the panel will snap out. If I click the icon below, this will snap to reveal that panel. If I click the icon again, the panel will snap back in. Next to this, we have some panels that are already visible. Here we can currently see the Layers, Libraries, and Color panel. Now if you look carefully, these panels also include other panels as tabs. For example, on this Layers panel, we also have the Channels panel and the Paths panel. What you will soon discover is that these panels, like the Control panel, are essential in order to produce work in Adobe Photoshop. In order to have a swift workflow in this program, it will help to have a comfortable setup of these panels. Now in Photoshop, you can arrange and customize these panels in various ways. I'll be demonstrating how to do this in the next episode, and I'll be recommending an effective setup. Though what you see here is a default setup. Now, if I come to the very bottom of the window, we have this thin strip. This also contains some useful tools and visual aids. If we look over on the far left, we have the magnification of our document. This will give you an indication at a glance at what percentage we are looking at the artwork in the canvas area. We can also use this to zoom in and out of our document precisely. We can do this by clicking in the box and typing in a specific value. For example, I can type in 50 and press enter, and I will see my artwork at 50%. To the right of this, we have a visual aid box. To the right of this, we can see a little white arrow. Now, if I click this, we can choose from a list of what we want to display in this box. For example, I'm going to choose Document Dimensions. And here I can see the size of my document. If I click and hold on this box, it will also give me a quick glance at the width, height, and resolution of my document. Convenient. So next, I want to touch on Document tabs. Now, what are document tabs? Well, currently, we have this document open, And if we look carefully, in the top left corner, just under the control panel, we have a tab that shows the document name. Now sometimes you may find yourself using multiple documents at any time. In Photoshop, you can have multiple documents open at once. For example, let's quickly create a new document. I'm going to come to File, New, and just click OK. And there it is. And let's make one more. File, New, and click OK, and we have another. Now look again closely at the top left, just under the control panel. This time we have 3 tabs. Now we can click these to navigate to other documents. If I click the far left tab, we are back to our first document. If I click the next tab along to the right, we can see the new document. And if I click the next tab along, we can see the other document. So as we use multiple documents, we can simply click on these tabs to navigate around. So when we start to use multiple documents later on in the course, we will be using document tabs in this way. So I'm going to close these 2 documents down by clicking on the X icon on the far left of the tabs until I am back to my original document. So that's a brief overview of the Adobe Photoshop interface. In the next video, we will be taking a closer look at the work panels, where I will be showing you how you can customize your pan layout to get a more comfortable and tailored workspace. See you in the next video.